Welcome to the Boneyard with Steve Robertson. As always, I am your good friend and host, Steve Robertson. Here on Maroon Friday, big weekend at the Yard as the Bulldogs take on Ole Miss in a very pivotal series for both teams. We're going to talk about Ole Miss extensively in this first segment of the show. We'll look around and we'll talk Egg Bowl stuff. A lot of State Ole Miss content today, and will be throughout the weekend. We'll talk a little bit about the coaching search. Got a cool top 10 for you today. I had promised one of our listeners, I had several of you all reach out about Brad Arnold and said, hey, Steve, it'd be great to do a top 10 of Three Doors Down. Even though we had done one, we did a Three Doors Down revisited list on Wednesday, and a lot of reaction. A lot of you guys reached out and said, hey, you know what, I've dealt with cancer as well. And so my thoughts and prayers are with Brad and his family. And, my thoughts and prayers are with you, too. Yeah, it's a tough thing. Lost my dad to cancer. And I can tell you it is one of those things, too, that no matter how well-intended you are, man, that is oftentimes a losing battle. And so when people beat it, it is, in many respects, a miracle. But, it's become more common in recent years as we have made some advancements in the treatment of cancer. We have a lot of cancer survivors out there. And so share that with all of you. Very appreciative of your feedback, your comments, and your support of Brad Arnold and the guys in Three Doors Down. But, that's one of those people that had hit me up, wanted me to do a classic country list. And we're going to do that. But we're not going to do it today because I forgot, because I've been busy chasing a coaching search, that one of my new modern rock band favorites dropped a brand new album today. So we're going to do the first listen, ranking the 10 tracks of that album based on first listen alone. Now, there were 3 advanced singles on the album, so I'm somewhat familiar with them, which makes it kind of difficult, right, when you do your first time through because you're already familiar with some of the material. But we pulled it off. I think you'll enjoy it. And Ani, my oldest son, he was so interesting. Before the album drops last night, he's in the fam chat, telling his younger brother, listen, I don't need any negativity for the next 48 hours. I just want to be able to enjoy this. And he wanted to do like one of those first look videos of his brother, like hearing this for the first time. The reaction videos, and I think most of those are staged. I'm just going to throw it out there. I think most of that stuff is staged, but nevertheless, super cool new album from a super cool band, and again, 10 tracks on the album, so we're going to rank them in my favorite based on the first listen through. And I completed that not too long ago. Went back and listened to a couple of them again to kind of break some ties, but here we are. And again, big weekend. It's been interesting not having a midweek game. I even had some correspondence with some of our baseball parents, and I said, it just feels weird. It's just weird not to have a game. It's one of the things that I love about baseball season, not to mention baseball itself, but the schedule. You don't have to figure out a lot of content when you got games as often as we do in baseball. And so I just throw that out there to you because it feels like forever since we've played a game. And yes, there is some weather in the forecast, so you need to be weather aware this weekend because I don't know how that's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen with all this. A lot of rain in the forecast, but it's interesting usually. And I joked yesterday, I said it just kind of shows you where the fan fatigue level is because earlier this year we were getting ready to go play a Sunday game, and somebody was already on the genespage.com message boards worried about the weather the next week. And it's like, man, we're already that far. We can't even finish the series without thinking about the next one. I think our first weather post this week popped up yesterday. Yeah, it's been a long season. It really has been. And for those of you that didn't read, we had the opportunity and the honor to share Coach Chris Simonis' letter with all of you. It's been extremely well received. One or two, knuckleheads out there, but by and large, I think people kind of see it for what it is now. And very grateful for Chris's contributions, but understand that it's time for new leadership. We wish he and his family the best as they move forward. Hey, let's thank our friends at Bulldog Burger Company, longtime sponsors of this show. We love Bulldog Burger Company, and we've loved them for a long time. They've loved us back. Yeah, they've done such a great job. Every time that I turn around, I have people that are sending me, "Hey, I went to Bulldog Burger today," and I'm kind of happy to kind of be synonymous with such a great organization. I remember sitting down with them the very first time when they wanted to advertise on this show, and it's been a wonderful relationship. And the thing that I think about is, like, how many places do I go where there is just such consistency in quality of service, in meal prep, in atmosphere and environment? There's not a lot of places that I can count on to hit all of the bars and check all the boxes every time I go. I love it. I've got a friend that every time that we travel, he always wants to go eat at some national restaurant. I like to go eat local. And he goes, well, one of the reasons that I like to go to, I'm not going to say the names, but these national chains, he's like, well, there's just a consistency everywhere you go in the country. I would argue that's not true, but that's one of the things I think that is magical about Bulldog Burger Company is, yes, it's a local place, but it gives you a national level consistency. Isn't that great? I mean, think about that for a second. How many places can you go and you know exactly what to expect, and then they deliver on what they promise? Yeah. Bulldog Burger Company kind of setting the standard in that respect in this area. 3 great locations to serve you: University Drive in Stark Vegas, Gloucester Street there in Tupelo, Lake Harbor Drive in the Richmond Flowood area. Have the spring rolls as your appetizer. They'll make you and everybody around you better looking. We all need more of that. Make the world a more beautiful place by eating more spring rolls from Bulldog Burger Company. Find your own favorites. I'm on the Pimentology again. That's kind of the official Boneyard burger. The Pimentology, add bacon. We need as much protein as we can get in our lives, right? Get that chocolate shake to go. Ride that ride home with a smile. Bulldog Burger Company, the place where people go to meet. MEAT. All right, let's go ahead and begin our weekend preview as we look ahead here at the Ole Miss Rebels. We played them back in Pearl, a game that we, feel like we should have won. But, hey, give them the credit for making the plays to win late. It really felt like we were just going to walk on through there in the ninth and be done. And, give them some credit for tying the ball game and forcing an extra inning and winning the game. Will Furnace gets us. So interesting, right? So, again, we'll go back. We didn't do a full preview back then, but, you go back and you look at that opening weekend, right? And Arizona, of course, was, the defending Pac-12 regular season and tournament champions. And Ole Miss gets them 2-1. They get absolutely destroyed by Texas. And at the time we thought, well, this is, it's going to be a long year in Oxford. Turns out that number one team in the country here as we get ready for the second to last weekend of the regular season. And Ole Miss has had a good year. And so, they get mercy ruled in that game. And I think a lot of us were kind of like, I don't know. And then Ole Miss mercy rolls Clemson, who was ranked 15th at the time, but one of the better teams in the ACC right now. And so you look back in hindsight and say, you know what? That Arizona win may have seemed more significant than it ultimately proved to be at the time. But a pretty loud win over Clemson. They struggle in these midweeks. We talked about that extensively ahead of our game in Pearl down there. It took them 10 innings to beat Arkansas State 4-2. And then they get Eastern Kentucky to come in. They sweep through there fairly easily. And then, Southern Miss goes to Oxford. The Rebels kind of beat them up a little bit. Southern Miss has been ranked in the top 25 for much of the year. Wright State proved to be the weekend opponent, and same situation. I mean, you just kind of run right through there and sweep through that. Not that we expected Wright State to put up much of a fight. They had double midweek games scheduled. The one with Southeastern Louisiana was canceled, and then they 8-7 win in 10 over Murray State. And those are the things you begin to think about, too, regional play, right? When you get into a regional, your midweek guys are going to have to maybe go get you a game, especially if you end up in a loser's bracket. Those are the things to look at when you begin to kind of look down the road. Jacksonville State stepped in, coached by former Missouri coach Steve Beazer. Did you know that? Yeah, maybe you didn't. But Ole Miss gets them in 3. The final game, a mercy rule affair on Sunday, 13-2. And then the midweek malaise pops up again. They go to South Alabama and get absolutely crushed, 14-5. And then Arkansas goes into Oxford and takes 2 of 3. Ole Miss wins game 1, 10-6. And from there, it's pretty much all Razorbacks. I mean, the Sunday game proved to be a little more competitive. Razorbacks win 12-9. Of course, Razorbacks, they coached by Dave Van Horn, right? They're always going to be competitive. Midweek game, they go in Pearl and play Southern Miss, and the Golden Eagles get this one 6-2. And then they get the benefit of playing Missouri early, which kind of really gave them some juice. We're going to get the benefit of playing them late. But I will say they have played a little bit better as of late. And listen, I get it. They didn't win any SEC games, but they were a lot more competitive against Georgia last week than they were against Ole Miss earlier in the year. And Ole Miss goes to Como, wins 9-6 on Friday, and then it's 17-10, 14-6. That's pretty brutal. It is. And if you're Ole Miss too, I mean, you think, hey, you give up 22 runs on a weekend. It's not great, but they still managed to get all three of them. Memphis gives Ole Miss tons of trouble here, and Oxford. Again, the midweek thing, just looking at postseason, you start thinking about that. Is there enough starting pitching for this team to advance? We'll see. But Memphis goes in there and gives them some trouble, but Ole Miss wins that game 7-5. And they catch Florida really at a perfect time, when Florida was just kind of coming to grips with all the injuries they had. Florida's a much different team now as they've kind of settled some pitching roles and kind of got some guys going. But a win's a win, right? Doesn't matter when you play them, as long as you get them. Ole Miss gets 2 of 3 from Florida. They could have had to sweep, but they get beat in game 2 of a doubleheader, 11-8. So the Gators salvage a game there, and then Ole Miss tanks Jackson State 18-7 in 7 innings. They go to Kentucky, and listen, we played this Kentucky team. They're a very scrappy bunch, but they cannot hit the baseball the way they did last year. That's not a criticism of Nick Mangione. The reality of it is they only have one positional starter back from last year, and should still make a regional somewhere. Maybe they get in as a 2 or a 3 somewhere, probably a 3, depending on how these last couple weekends go. But anytime that you get a road win in this league, it's a big deal, and Ole Miss does. They get 2 out of 3, and these games incredibly competitive. Game 1 is a 10-inning affair that Ole Miss wins 5-4. Game 2, Ole Miss wins 3-1, and then they have the Saturday finale that goes 12 innings, 5-4, in favor of Ole Miss. So all these games very, very competitive. And, you know what Nick Mangione's going to do. He's going to find a way to make these games competitive. He did with us last week with one exception, as you guys are aware. Ole Miss goes to Memphis and gets a 10-0 shelling of the Tigers. So, interesting. State and Ole Miss both played home and home with Memphis. Interesting. And then they have the absolute bloodletting as Alcorn State rolls in. I think, if I remember correctly, Ole Miss set a school record for runs in a game in this contest, 29-1. And then you get Tennessee. And you knew it was going to be interesting with Fisher and Liam Dole both going to Tennessee. And there was a lot of discussion about, Fisher's the one that was kind of the linchpin in that thing and kind of convinced Liam to go with him. And now Liam Dole projected by many to be the first college pitcher taken in the draft. Yeah. So Tennessee gets game 1 3-2. And you knew Ole Miss would be jacked for this series. And they should have been, right? They feel like they were tampered with. I feel like they had everything where they needed to have it, and lo and behold, 2 of their best players leave to go to Tennessee. And I think it says a lot about Mike Bianco that he can lose his Friday night guy and a guy in the heart of his order to a conference competitor and then still be a winning team expected to go back to an NCAA regional. I'm just going to call it for how I see it. They get game 2 against Tennessee to force the rubber game, and Ole Miss had the lead late and couldn't close it out. Tennessee gets a 10-8 win. And then some craziness happens, right? It's like that. Maybe they put too much emotionally into that weekend because they played that. What was the education game at like 11 in the morning against Little Rock, and they lose 7-3. And then they go to South Carolina and lose 2 out of 3 there. Now they come back kind of angry on Saturday, and they take the finale 12-2. And South Carolina's been absolutely pitiful, right? Then they get us 8-7 in extra innings. That's the thing. You look at this Ole Miss team, too. That when they've had to go to extra innings, they have typically played pretty well. And that's a lot about management, too. They get Vanderbilt and Oxford and get 2 out of 3. They get absolutely destroyed in the final game, 13-0. But, hey, you win the weekend, and that's what matters most. Austin Peay Makes it interesting in Oxford, but the Rebels survive, win that game 6-3. They head to Oklahoma last weekend, lose the first two. Kyson Witherspoon, one of the top college pitchers in the draft pool right now. State beats him, Ole Miss unable to do it, but 2-0 ball game. I watched a lot of that game. Hunter Elliott and Witherspoon both just kind of going tit for tat, and then you have a couple little mistakes, and that's what happens in games like that. Whoever makes the big mistake loses. There's no margin for error. And then the next day, Crossland comes back and shoves against Ole Miss, and so the Sooners take the series. Like many of you, I was rooting for the sweep. It didn't work out. Ole Miss takes game 3, 7-3. No midweek game for them this week, and then after us, that they finish up, it's going to be interesting, right? So they have UT Martin if they play that game on Tuesday in Oxford, and then the red-hot Auburn Tigers head to Oxford. Now that could be a very significant series, not just in the SEC standings, but in the NCAA regional pairings, and that's a huge series. And you begin to think about what's in front of Ole Miss here. Nobody's really projecting them to host right now, but they are still in the conversation. They end up with a couple of good weekends here down the stretch. They could certainly play their way in. The Rebels, 33-15 overall, 13-11 in the conference. But if you begin to think about that aspect of it, right, they win these last two weekends, all of a sudden you're a 17-13 team, and you're right there in the mix to host. And so it's still right there in front of them. No matter what the projections say today, there is still plenty to play for if you are an Ole Miss Rebel. And certainly heading in here this weekend against a red-hot Mississippi State team after they've scuffled a little bit. And I think sometimes, the rivalry itself is an important aspect of this. And it kind of sometimes doesn't match conventional thinking because the better team doesn't always win. That's just kind of how life is. But you go back and kind of look here in hindsight, you lose the Oklahoma series, but you win the Vandy series, right? But you lost that South Carolina series. You lost that Tennessee series, right? And so they've lost 3 of the last 4 series. And, of course, the win over Vanderbilt is pretty loud. But, again, you look at this team and kind of see what they've done on the road. And, again, that series win at Kentucky, interesting. But just 8-6 on the road. And that's always something you kind of consider. Now, that's not just league matchups. Of course, they played some neutral site games too. But, one of those road games obviously is, Memphis. But we have one of those too. But hadn't been great on the road, and not a lot of teams are. But this is their last road series. And it's so tough too. Back-to-back road weekends. I haven't done the numbers on that, and maybe we should, to kind of see what happens in that second series for SEC teams, because at some point everybody has that on the schedule. We had it early for us. You had Oklahoma and LSU, right? So you have some of that. But it's so interesting, just based off kind of recent observations, that second weekend is tough. Now, maybe it's going to be a little bit different because it's a rivalry weekend. But, we need you in Starkville, Mississippi this weekend. And so let's take a look at the inside the numbers of the Ole Miss Rebels. And again, this is kind of updating our work from the pre-Pearl affair. But Luke Hill currently leads the Rebels with a .344 batting average, 8 home runs, 31 RBI. He was a guy who transferred in 2 years ago. Had some struggles at shortstop. I interviewed Coach Mike Bianco in a one-on-one feature earlier this week, and the move to third, he believes, has kind of galvanized their defense. They move Udemark to second, and then Luke Hill to third, and it's kind of settled things. Mitchell Sanford, of course, got it by way of LSU and UNO. Ends up at Ole Miss, hitting .310. And what's interesting, among the regulars, that's the only 2 guys that are hitting 300-plus. They're hitting .287 as a team, but not a lot of plus 300 hitters. And so people talk about this team offensively. They've been good, but not great. And it's just interesting to look at those numbers. Again, a lot of guys hitting 270 or a little bit better, but not really getting over to 300 threshold. And SEC pitching kind of does that for you too. But what the interesting part of it is they're holding other offenses down too. So you're getting pretty good starting pitching, and we'll get to that here in a second. But this is a team that's hit 88 jacks this year. They've only allowed 49. Yeah, the pitching coach has made a lot of difference in Ole Miss baseball. We went through some of that last year here at Mississippi State. But what's interesting, too, is like the hit-by-pitch numbers are interesting. 75 of those for Ole Miss hitters. And 3 guys in double digits. Luke Chang, who's really not a real threat offensively, leads the team with 14 hit-by-pitches. So he's obviously a guy that's going to crowd the plate. But kind of working through the home run numbers here. Austin Foley, who hit the home run at Pearl against Ryan McPherson to tie the game, has 15 jacks on the year. Ryan Moorman with 10. Judd Udemark with 13. That's very respectable number, 45 RBI for him. And that's the thing, when you look at the run producers in this lineup, there is a little bit of length there. It's not like maybe it was even a year ago. Last year, it kind of felt like once you got through the 5-hole, you were in pretty good shape. Now, they got some guys like that Hayden Federico, and it's interesting, if his name was Hayden Jones, may not be there, but there is a Braden Jones that is out now, but we'll get to that shortly. But you work through this team, and again, there are some things that concern you. And number one, it's the stolen base is part of it too. 63 of 83 on the year. They've had some caught stealings, but Mitchell Sanford has been really good. And you remember that was the big talk before, is the back injury. And it appears not to have been an issue for him. Having a really good year for Ole Miss, hitting 310 with 12 tanks, 35 ribbies. But, just kind of taking a cursory glance at this thing, there's a lot of guys that have put the ball in play. Now, the strikeout numbers at times have not been great. 438 is a team, and Udemark has 66 of them, which leads a team. And you're going to have that with some guys that are free swingers. Ryan Moorman with 52. But you got to give Bianco some credit here for kind of reconstructing a lineup. And then here they are with 2 weekends to go, in a position to make an NCAA tournament regional without any question. And again, 2 good weekends they could be hosting. And that's not anything that we want to see happen. So we need to kind of take matters into our own hands here. Hunter Elliott, and Bianco and I spoke about him extensively. And if you've watched Hunter Elliott this year, I think this is the best version of Hunter Elliott that we've seen. The lower half, extremely well developed. He's getting great push off the mound, and he's so competitive, right? And it's tip of the cap for a guy like that. You remember, 2 years ago, they kind of delayed getting the surgery, and it ultimately cost him 2 years. And you got to wonder how that's going to impact him, in the draft. But certainly, he'll get an opportunity. I mean, a big physical left-hander that can consistently throw 3 pitches for strikes. That's extremely important. And he's had more quality starts than wins. I mean, there have been some times that the bullpen hadn't been able to come through, but Hunter Elliott leads the staff with 60.2 of an innings of work. He's 6-3, so he leads in victories. He is, it leads them in starts. Appearances have got some other bullpen guys that have done some good things for him. But this is a formidable left-handed guy. Only allowed 3 tanks this year, too. That's something to really watch, too. We're a team that likes to have the home run ball, and he's only allowed 3 this year, giving it well less than a hit per inning, 42 hits, and just 25 runs. ERA 371. Not necessarily elite, but in this league, you got a guy that's consistently getting you into threes, gives you a chance to win. Strikeout numbers have been good, 71-31. The walks maybe not as good as you'd like, but still about 2.5 to 1 here. Extra base hits hadn't been a real big problem, but when you do barrel him up, he keeps the ball down, so it's more doubles than big flies. Riley Maddox will be the Saturday starter, a guy that we've known. We've seen him consistently the last couple of years. He's 5-4 on the year with a 5.80 ERA. working about 4.5, 5 innings ball game. And he's had some good outings against us. He's pitched against us in the Governor's game before. But, this is a guy that, knows the league. The league kind of knows him. Of the starters, he is a guy that has been hit the most. Given up over a hit per 52 and 49 and allowed 32 earned. Batting average against right at 270. Now, Mason Nichols announced as the Sunday starter, or the Game 3 starter, depends on how this thing kind of shakes up for us. But a dozen starts, and they've been very consistent with this rotation. And you know what? Congrats on that. Right? That's a tough thing to do in the SEC. But Mason Nichols, 12 starts on the year. He's worked 43, and he also has given up just over a hit per inning, allowed 26 earned runs, 46 hits in 43 innings pitched. But he's also averaging right at a strikeout per inning, too. He is a guy that has been willing to give up the long ball. He and Riley Maddox both have given up 8 tanks this year. Batting average against him right at 266. And so, the Game 3, Carson Ligon, Mason Nichols could be an interesting one, to say the least. But Braden Jones, the reliever, done for the year. That was announced last week. Very talented right-handed guy. We have seen him, and he's a guy that ultra competitive too. We saw him back in Pearl, and he goes an inning and a third, doesn't allow a hit or a run, and gets 3 strikeouts in that ball game. But he will not be at their disposal. I understand he's going to have to undergo Tommy John surgery. Kind of wish everybody the best in that respect. I have never, ever, 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 ever been a fan of the celebratory injury type conversation. That stuff just is not something that I'm going to be a part of, and especially like in the days of the UCL and the ACL and all that stuff, guys. It's like a year at a minimum for these guys to recover. I mean, that's just how it is, And interesting, there was talk about Braden Randall, the Ole Miss infielder, to be out. He had a finger surgery here recently too, and you wish that kid the best. I mean, hitting 288. It's been a regular infielder for them, so one less option in that respect. But this Ole Miss bullpen has been a little bit up and down at times. And there have been some times when the starters have done their job and then you hadn't been able to kind of close out a ball game. But, as a staff, ERA of 4.60. And again, a lot of people around the league have just talked about consistently how things have changed with this Ole Miss team because of, the changes that they've made within the staff, and everybody goes through that, right? When you're losing, you got to find a way to get some things done. And it appears they have, I'm ready to play ball. I know you guys are as well, but, Joel Mangrum has come in and done a good job for them. And Brandon, Mississippi guy too, was a guy that came up through the Mississippi Junior College system and spent some time in the pros. But if you look at the difference between this Ole Miss team and last year's team, other than the fact you've got a little more length in the lineup, pitching has been the difference. Pitching has been the difference for sure. But we faced a lot of these guys down in Pearl that we'll see this weekend. And let's take a quick look at look at conference statistics here. We mentioned Braden Randall hadn't played in a while, right? And sophomore from Rockwall, Texas, guy they were expecting some big things from. But the last time he played was against us in that game at Pearl. But the reason I mentioned his name first is because of the fact in conference play, even though he's not been a regular, he's hit the baseball well. They played in about half the games, less than half the games of the rest of the starters. But 11 games in SEC play, hitting 364. They've kind of learned to play without him. But, Luke Hill, obviously a guy that has done a good job overall. But as Mike Bianco said when I interviewed him earlier this week, Luke got off to a slow start last year, but proved to be the top hitter in SEC play. Well, that's the case again this year, hitting .319. Leading the regulars. And then Austin Foley, of course, the home run hitter against us in Pearl. He got 9 tanks in the SEC, and certainly something that we'll have to watch. Got to keep the ball down against him. Mitchell Sanford has had 8 home runs in SEC play. Isaac Humphrey with 5. Udemark with 4. But a lot of those kind of spread out among them. But in conference play, they've hit 43 home runs and allowed 35. So that's not as gaudy as the numbers were against non-conference competition. Stolen bases, not nearly as good either, 29 of 37. They've allowed 25 of 31. But Luke Hill, 10 of 12 in SEC play. He is the only Rebel with double-digit steals. But they're not running the bases maybe like they have historically. But, Mike Bianco likes these guys to be able to go up there and mash. And hadn't worked out maybe it's quite the way they wanted to, but the reality of it is they're right where they want to be after 2 very difficult years. Looking at conference pitching for them, Connor Spencer has got 7 appearances for them and 1 save, and he works he's like an inning per guy, but he has been really good for them. ERA of less than 1, batting average against of 167, and because this is in conference play. Will McCall's one has got a couple of saves for him too, 11 appearances. 21 and 1/3 of an innings pitch, allowing about a hit per, which is not great for a reliever. But the strikeout numbers are ridiculous. 23 Ks against just 2 walks. And so even though teams are going to hit him 266, he's not a guy that's going to go out there and walk people and load the bases. You got to hit your way on against him, and I respect it. I do. Looking at these starting pitchers, too. Hunter Elliott in conference play, 3-3 with a 4.57 ERA. And again, less than a hit per. That's always good. And then averaging a strikeout plus in every inning pitched. Riley Maddox has not been nearly as good in conference play. He is 2-3 with a conference ERA of 7.18. That's a tough thing, right? And then, of course, Mason Nichols. He's had 8 league starts. And looking at the numbers here, ERA of 6.04. 2-1 record against SEC foes, 28.3 innings pitched, allowed 33, so he's given up more than a hit per, allowed 19 earned. Strikeout to walk ratio is about 2-1, 23 Ks against 13. And again, you look at that number, 8 SEC starts, 28 innings. You can do the math on that, kids. That's about 3 to 4 innings. And when you've kind of got a bullpen that has been a little bit up and down, you need to work deeper in ball games. Again, I don't think it's outside of tonight's game. I don't think it's going to be a pitching masterpiece. I think this could prove to be basically an offensive weekend where somebody finds a good reliever to kind of put up some zeros to allow you to get some separation. That's an important part of all of this stuff. It's not like last year where you had Cal Steven and Durangelo that could work 7-8 innings a game. It's not like that. Bullpen was really good last weekend, but it's been a long time since we played a baseball game. And so we're excited to get back on the field. I do think State takes the series. I know many of you are calling for the sweep. I don't expect a sweep. I would absolutely love a sweep. And not just because it's Ole Miss, but because Mississippi State needs every win we can get here down the stretch. That's an important aspect of all this. It's just stacking up wins in SEC play no matter who they're against. And the fact that Ole Miss's RPI is great. Allows us a chance to pull into the top 30 because we're not going to gain any RPI points next week, right? When you got to go play North Alabama, which we may cancel, and then Missouri. And that's the reality of life. When you get opportunities, RPI climbing opportunities, you got to take them, and State's got a good chance to this weekend. Now it's time for our Close with Blair player to watch this weekend. Blair Chandler is my friend, your friend, our collective friend in the mortgage industry. Blair knows how to get things done. 24 years of experience. Nobody stays in any industry 20-plus years by accident. They don't just let you hang around. You got to produce, and that's what he does. Closed the Boneyard lawn just last week. So great to be able to connect you with my friends that do such a great job because we're all a family here. Reach out to Blair at 601-500-2344, 601-500-2344. You can call or text him directly. That's not a call center or a receptionist. It goes right to Blair. Or you can learn more about him at closewithblair.com. He can be your advocate with underwriting. He knows how to construct loans to give you the best chance of approval. Get that pre-qualification letter too. It's a big, big, big thing. They don't tell you about that. It's a life hack. They don't tell you that in the beginning. Get that pre-qualification letter. That way you're not shopping above your means. Gives you and your real estate agent a much better idea of where and what you should start with. Yeah, it's true. And then we can connect you with Blair and make the dream of home ownership come true for you. So whether you're looking for your first home, your next home, or your retirement home, look no further than Blair Chandler at closewithblair.com. Our player to watch this week is going to be Noah Sullivan. I think Noah is due for a good weekend. Noah is kind of a pro-grade hitter, but you're going to get a couple of right-handers this weekend, and then the best pitcher that they have, Hunter Elliott's the lefty. And he knows how to pitch righties too, don't get me wrong. But I think Noah Sullivan is a guy that doesn't try to do too much, but when you make a mistake can punish you. I think this is a weekend that works well for him. We'll have our pitching update on Hunter Elliott, or our report, later today. But I think when you look at this weekend, I think it's going to be a very competitive weekend. I think it's going to be tight, and I think the crowd's going to make a difference. And for many of these guys, first time they've played in a State Ole Miss game, there is an intensity that goes along with that. And I think Noah Sullivan is a guy that has kind of risen to the occasion. Ace Reese, obviously a guy that's going to be a big part of things too. Bryce Chance, a Mississippi guy that kind of grew up with this rivalry, as did Hunter Hines. All of those guys understand the importance. But I think Noah Sullivan's very balanced approach plays well this weekend. Time for today's Top 10 list, brought to you by Calido Guitars. That's C-A-L-I-D-O Guitars.com, a Mississippi State-owned and operated company out of Lake Jackson, Texas. I like to keep business in the family whenever we can. I'm so incredibly proud to partner with Calido Guitars. Here's the thing. If you or the guitar player in your family are looking for gear, let's keep it in our family, right? Don't just go to Amazon, right? Because we're going to give you some incentive and some discounts to buy from Calido Guitars. Whether you're looking for a beginner guitar or a professional guitar, an acoustic guitar, an electric guitar, a classical guitar, anything you need. Gig bags, cases, and there's just something cool about walking around with a guitar case. It just is. It just is. You just get more cool points by doing it, plus you protect your instrument when you travel. You don't want to just throw that thing in the trunk, man. You don't. Too many things can go wrong. So protect your guitar player, get all your accessories from Calido Guitars, and here's what they're going to do. But since you listen to this show, promo code BSR, Beautiful Steve Robertson, you know what that stands for. That gets you 10% off your purchase. And no sales tax unless you live in the state of Texas, and free shipping. And if that wasn't enough, they're going to make a 5% donation of your purchase price to the Bulldog Initiative / Bulldog Excellence Fund. If you've been in the market for a new guitar or some new gear, that's the way to go. And you're helping Mississippi State put more competitive teams on the fields and courts of play. Calido Guitars, our proud partner for the Top 10 list. All right, I had committed to, I hate to go back on my promises, but I had to today. I had told one of our listeners that requested the Three Doors Down list, hey, can we do a classic country? Guys, I know some classic country. I grew up in South Mississippi. So we're going to do that on Monday. But today, brand new Sleep Token album is out. And so I like to do these first listen top 10s. Now, songs will grow over me, or grow on me. I hope they don't grow over me, but you understand my point. Sometimes the first listen doesn't really capture you. And then as you begin to enjoy the journey that an album takes you on, sometimes you have a song that just kind of finds you where you are. There's like a lyric or something that you're like, oh my gosh, that part is perfect. Now, here's a couple things that I want to tell you about Sleep Token. And maybe you don't know. They are very different. And we talk about genre-bending type artist, and that's what Sleep Token is. And what's interesting about this group, the debut single on this album was a song called Emergence. It became the first #1 single for Sleep Token on the rock charts. The Summoning had gone to #2, and if you guys know about that, you should. You can celebrate that. But Emergence, when it was released, because there has been a lot of anticipation of this album, The first day they released Emergence, over 2 million streams. The first week, right at 10 million. And they had 2,000 downloads the first week. And you go back to I think the album Taking Me Back to Eden is an absolute masterpiece. I love it from start to finish. And that's one of the things that I love about Sleep Token is that you can listen to the album in its entirety. There's really not any skips. And that's one of the things I was excited about. There were 3 advanced singles on this album, and then the rest of the album dropped. And I dig it. Now, it's not your traditional heavy metal album. There's a lot of piano. There's some violin. The composition on this is just beautiful. Of course, they're a band from across the pond in England, so there's a little bit of an English quality to the vocal delivery. But this album will likely be number 1 for some time because of the huge fan base that they have. Matter of fact, let's kind of check in right now. Let's just check in right now and see if we can get some information. Let's just see if we can do that as you hear me typing. Let's see here. They hadn't updated yet. Remember Andy Grammer? Yeah, he's on there right now too. Yeah, so later today we'll probably get an update on that. But it's always so interesting. But so a lot of people say rock music is dead. It's not. It's just changing. And we've needed some, transition type bands to kind of usher in a new quality. And I think Sleep Token is one of those. Again, there's a lot of heavy metal elements in this, but there's also some things I think anybody could appreciate some Sleep Token. And so here we go. The new album, Even in Arcadia, I believe is a tremendous follow-up to Take Me Back to Eden. And if you're new to Sleep Token, get to know the new material, but then go back. And I go back to the Summoning and Chokehold and Granite and all that. There's so many great songs. But I'm eager for my next road trip, which will come next week, and I'm just going to let the joy of new music kind of bathe over me. So we're going to go number 10, which is the 3rd track on the album. Again, I love all these songs, but this is the order in which I love them. To me, there are no clunkers on this album. But Past Self is number 10, and it's the only one that has the explicit lyrics advisory too. So you can listen to all this with it. Plus the accent's kind of thick enough you can kind of, get through it. It's not like they're just chanting inappropriate language. But Past Self is number 10. Number 9, and I think this is one of those songs, it's a very lengthy song. It's called Gethsemane. And I think it's pretty safe to say when you listen to this, you kind of get a sense that there is some religious belief of sorts within this band. And that's not to say they're a Christian rock band. They absolutely are not. But this song, the composition on it is very interesting. Number 8, and the titles of these songs are always so interesting, but this is Democles, and it mentions it early in the song. And then it's not the chorus, right? It's not like the old 80s, verse, chorus, outro. It's not that. But it's a very interesting song. And of the first 3 singles, I was really jacked when this one came out because I thought this is kind of what I wanted to hear from this band. Number 7 is the lead track on the album. It's Look to Windward. And this is one that's got a little more juice to it. Like you can't open up with the ballady type song, but everything in their catalog has this balance, right? You never know what's coming, and that's one of the things that I love about it. Song composition is something that's very challenging for me, and so when people master that skill, as these guys do, I have a lot of respect for that. Number 6, and I would say the first few times I listened to this is my favorite single, but Dangerous. Not a single yet, but the offering. Dangerous, good track, and it's again, there's so much of this, there's the human experience in their lyrical content. It's not like they're looking for the big hook, they're looking for the big song. Interesting. Number 5, of course, the lead single, Emergence. Of course, again, it's so crazy to think about that 2 million streams on day 1. I think this is probably a good introductory song to them. Now, there's a part in there where they kind of change some things up. Go ahead and put your arms around me. And interesting, I read a column earlier this week that men that kiss their wives goodbye in the morning, on average, live 4 years longer. I don't think it's necessarily the kiss that extends the life. I think it's the way that person lives and appreciates their significant other is part of that, right? So men that get up and kiss their wives goodbye in the morning live 4 years longer. So let that be a lesson to you. But also, too, that if you kiss for 6 seconds, which is, that's not necessarily the middle-aged way to go, but you kiss for 6 seconds, even if it's just a peck, both of you secrete oxytocin, and that makes you happy. Yeah, everybody wants to be loved, right? And everybody wants to have a sense of affection, but it's interesting. It's very interesting. And it talks about those prolonged hugs kind of have the same effect. Like when you see somebody you hadn't seen in a long time, it makes you happy to hug them, to be close to them. Enjoy emotions. They're wonderful things. Number 4, I absolutely dig this track, man. I do. And it starts out very melodic with the piano, and then it's kind of got a hip-hop vibe to it, and it just is very dynamic. I think you're going to have a lot of fun with this one. It's Provider. Number 4 is Provider. Number 3, a weird title, but I tell you, it's one of the more rocking songs. I think it's a great close to the album. You open with Look to Windward, which kind of has this melodic intro, and the next thing you know, we're rocking. And the final track is called Infinite Baths. But man, it is a ride. It is absolutely a wild ride. Number 2, I think maybe the most powerful song on the album. And it is the title track, Even in Arcadia. I absolutely love it. And I don't care what genre of music that you listen to. Whether you're a rock person, a classical person, pop music, country, whatever. I think everybody could appreciate this track. It is very, very powerful. And there's this incredible violin part at the end that really just kind of speaks to me. But number 1 was an advanced single on this album. And it's a little more commercial than a lot of the rest of the album. But it's about a relationship. And it's a song called Caramel. Stick to me like caramel. And that sounds kind of silly, but you'll find yourself kind of singing along to it. And I love music, as you guys know, and I love music that I wish I had written, right? And you say, well, there's so much of that. That's true. But the writing skills of this band, I think, are absolutely elite. And it's like you hear something, you think, holy smokes, I wish I had thought of that. It's just so ingenious. So be able to download that today. Again, if you're looking for something new, or you're traveling, or you're looking for a new band to kind of get into, I think you'll enjoy Sleep Token. And again, it's so crazy. Like you'll start a song, it's piano and cello, and next thing you know, there's screaming at the end, and it's operatic in some respects. It's like a modern day composition that could be in a musical or something. It's very theatrical, and I think that's the thing that music has kind of missed. And of course, a lot of the stuff that I write and work with other people on is just kind of straight ahead rock and roll. But when I look at this stuff, it's very inspiring and it's very mood setting. And so I can't wait to get in the car and listen to the new singles or the new tracks in the car. They've done such advancements with automotive audio over the years. Pretty jacked to check these out. And so you should too. And again, even if you're not a fan of Sleep Token or rock music, I think everybody should listen to the title track, Even in Arcadia, and just kind of see how that sits with you. Next segment of the show brought to you by Campus Bookmart, a Starkvillian institution. We love Campus Bookmart. We do. We do, because they have the things that we want. Mississippi State merch of all kinds, whether you're looking for apparel, gift ideas, diploma frames, graduation, right? Yeah, you let it slip up on you. Be the preferred aunt, uncle, grandparent, or whoever, and get that Mississippi State diploma frame from Campus Bookmart. Now, next time you're in town, go by and see their smiling faces. I get a complimentary hug every time I go in there. I understand they don't do that for everybody, But I appreciate that. I love them for that. But a great service, man, from a great company that does such a great job outfitting our fan base with the latest in Mississippi State merch. Visit them online at campusbookmart.net, and by being a loyal Boneyard listener, you get a phrase that pays, and that is BSR. Stands for Beautiful Steve Robertson. That gets you free shipping on all orders over $75. Any order less than $75, absolutely incomplete. All right, looking back at the night it was, and then we'll kind of look ahead at the weekend to be. Could be a rainy weekend around the South. May see some doubleheaders. No word yet about any changes with Mississippi State. We'll keep you abreast over at genespage.com and certainly on my social media feeds. But last night it rained baseballs at Plainsman Park. Is number 8 Auburn. And again, I go back to this, not to pat myself on the back. I told everybody at the beginning of the year that Auburn could be a dark horse in this thing. They've been red hot. They take 2 of 3 from us, then they get 2 of 3 from Tennessee in Knoxville, and now they're beating up on South Carolina 24-2. Nuts, man. Absolutely nuts. 20 hits. South Carolina scores a run in the first, and you're thinking, okay, it's going to be a ball game. Then there's a 5 spot, a 7 spot, a 3 spot, a 9 spot there in the 5th. The game is over, right? South Carolina gets 1 in the 6th. And you begin to start thinking about Ethan Petrie, right? And there was a lot of discussion he may go in the portal last year, elected not to go in the portal. And, man, they are having a dreadful season. Absolutely a dreadful season. And you look at the numbers from last night, just gaudy type stuff. And Brandon Stone started for South Carolina. He takes a loss. Guys, he goes 2 innings, gives up 8 earned on 8 hits. Didn't strike out anybody, walked 1, faced 17 hitters and hit 3 of them. Not a good night. Stone drops to 2-6 on the year. And then, of course, they end up throwing Tyler Pitzer, one of their better relievers in that ball game, and he gives up 10 earned runs. Cam Tilley got the start. He started against us on Sunday. They threw him last night. He went 5 innings, allowed 1 run on 2 hits, 6 Ks, 4 walks. And then Ben Shore, a guy that has been banged up out of the transfer portal, and he pitched the final 2 innings. So Auburn is really set up well pitching-wise for the rest of the weekend. You expected them to sweep, and I feel pretty confident that they will. And again, mindful, a lot of these games today will kind of be moved around. Auburn and South Carolina have already made that decision. They're going to play 2 today. Game 1 will get underway at 1 o'clock. And then, about 40 minutes later, they will play game 2. So Auburn will get that series over. And think about how well that sets up for them going into next week is everybody plays Thursday, Friday, Saturday. They can get all 3 of their games in by Friday and then get an extra day's rest. Really sets up well for them ahead of that road trip to Oxford, Mississippi. All right, Vanderbilt's at Tennessee. I think this could be a competitive series, but Tennessee has kind of lost a bit of confidence. I mean, you look up, they're basically even with Vanderbilt in the standings right now with a 14-10 record. But earlier in the year, I thought Tennessee was the best team I had seen in person. We saw them in Houston. They were absolutely phenomenal. They really were. And I thought they should be the number 1 team in the country. And then shortly thereafter, they reached that point, but they were not able to maintain that level of success. But Vanderbilt and Tennessee in Knoxville. We're going to take Tennessee. I think in the end, Tony V inspires this team to a win this weekend. Oklahoma at Kentucky. That could be an interesting one too. Of course, the Wildcats now 10-14 in the league against an Oklahoma team that has pitched it pretty well. They haven't been nearly as good on the road. Nobody tends to be. But this could be a situation where Oklahoma could put themselves really, really firmly in the hosting discussion. I'm going to take Oklahoma 2-1 in this. I think Kyson Witherspoon, who is, again, listed as one of the top pitchers in college baseball, and we've kind of figured that out ahead of our series. When you begin to look at the numbers, and I had one scouting friend tell me that there's not a college pitcher in the country with a higher trajectory right now as it relates to the draft than Kyson Witherspoon. So you got to feel like they'll win game 1 tonight, and I think Oklahoma's got just enough pitching to make this thing interesting because Kentucky, offensively, not a great team. Missouri at Texas A&M, and as noted earlier this week, Missouri's next loss will set an SEC record for losses in league play. They are 0-24. There have been multiple teams that have had 24 losses over the years. Nobody has ever lost 25. We went to a 30-game schedule in 1996, and so you know the numbers before that. It was very difficult to lose 24. They've lost 24, 13-35 overall. But again, Missouri played pretty competitively against Georgia last weekend. Again, Georgia not a great road team, but found a way to get a sweep in some games that were a little bit tighter than we anticipated. I like the Aggies here, and I like the Aggies to sweep. And again, Texas A&M began the year the number one team in the country, and many people felt they were the favorite to win the national championship. Here we are 2 weekends to go in the regular season. They are just 7 games over 500, 27-20. I'd love for Missouri to win a game this weekend, though. Would absolutely love it. Yeah, 'cause we don't play A&M. I'd love for Missouri to sweep the series, right? Get some RPI points for us. But yeah, I expect A&M to take the series and probably sweep. And again, Jackson Lovich, kind of the best player on a terrible team, man. 340 average, 9 tanks, 42 RBI. Just not much around him. Georgia will be at Alabama. This could be interesting. It really could be. And I told you guys at the beginning of the year, I thought Alabama were kind of pretenders. They're a good team, not a great team, but they're at home. You feel like Riley Quick should be able to get them a win. I think they split Friday, Saturday, and then Sunday just kind of boils down to who can do it, right? Who's got enough pitching left on Sunday or whatever day they play these games, game 3, to win. I like Georgia to take the series, but I won't be surprised if Alabama finds a way to get it done. Slade Alford, former Diamond Dog, hitting .338, 15 home runs, 55 RBI on the year. Arkansas will beat LSU. Now, this LSU team has been interesting. They're 15-9 in the league. Arkansas 2 games ahead of them at 17-7. Arkansas, again, still in the mix to win the SEC regular season championship. You know Dave Van Horn and those guys will be ready to go. And going to play LSU at Alex Box in May is not like going to play them in March or April. Typically warmer weather, ball tends to jump out of that ballpark anyway, but especially in the warmer months. But I haven't looked at the wind reports for this series, but the way Arkansas is playing, I could see them going in there getting 2 out of 3. But LSU fans tend to kind of show up. But when you think about the wet weather, maybe that negates some of the home field advantage in some of these ball games, and this could be one of them. Florida's at Texas. This, to me, outside of our series, may be the most interesting series of the weekend. Texas gets swept last weekend. Florida is absolutely red hot. They are absolutely playing up to their potential. Now, they're 8 games behind Texas. Not going to catch Texas, but they could help Arkansas catch Texas. Let's say that Arkansas gets 2 out of 3 this weekend. That gives them 19 wins. Well, Texas certainly right now sits with 19 wins. If Florida wins this series 2-1, that could be a scenario we go into the final weekend where Arkansas is just a game back of Texas. Just, food for thought there. And, of course, Ole Miss will play here at Mississippi State. Again, set to play at 7:30. We'll see. I would be perfectly okay if they called us and said, hey, we're going to play 2 today, get your butt to the ballpark. But going to be an interesting weekend. There's just still so much left to play for. A lot of people are trying to play their way into a hosting opportunity. Others are trying to play their way into the tournament. And in Missouri, trying to avoid a new level of futility in the Southeastern Conference. So let's take a quick look at our standings here. And again, with 6 games to play, it appears to be a 2-horse race. Now, of course, Georgia, they go in there and find a way to sweep Alabama. They could jump right back into the mix here. But they are 6 games out of first place. So a possibility, not a probability, but the Bulldogs have won 6 straight. Probably going to end up with a top 8 national seed. I don't think there's much question about that. And that's something a lot of our fans are mindful of because Will Coggin and Nick Amorati are there, former Diamond Dogs, part of that staff. But again, Texas 19-5, Arkansas just 2 games back, 17-7. And again, this last weekend, Texas could have clinched the SEC championship had they taken a series from Arkansas. They didn't do it. They got swept, and now all of a sudden we got drama. Yeah, we have drama indeed. Tied with Georgia right now in the SEC standings is LSU at 15-9. And again, that's a very interesting series between LSU and Arkansas. LSU expected to host, but man, if the weekend doesn't go the way they want to, could be very interesting. Could be very interesting. We still got a weekend left to play. Tennessee and Vanderbilt, we talked about them tied in the standings at 14-10. Auburn just right behind them at 14-11. And you got to like the way it kind of lays out for Auburn. Getting South Carolina late, and I think we would, it's tough to call the sweep, but you start thinking about that aspect that if they sweep and go into the final weekend 16-11 against an Ole Miss team that's scuffling a little bit right now, could Auburn get to 18 wins? And if they do, what does that mean for seeding? Alabama 13-11, tied there with Ole Miss. Is a glut right there together. Auburn, Alabama, Ole Miss, Oklahoma all entered the weekend at 13-11. And now, somebody in that group is going to play their way out of any discussions about potentially hosting. Florida coming up from the rear, if we mentioned 11-13. State and Kentucky tied right there at 10-14 with Texas A&M. And again, you expect A&M to take care of Missouri, which puts a little more pressure on Mississippi State. South Carolina 5-20, they're out of it. Missouri 0-24, they're out of it. And so, everybody will go to Hoover, and then we'll kind of see how things go. A lot of people have wondered, hey, what do we need to do to get into the tournament? Well, it's simple. You win these last 2 weekends. I think you're in. But I would really like to have 5 more wins. Like you get this weekend and sweep Missouri, or the other way around. If you get 5 SEC wins, that gets State to 500. I don't think there's any question we're in at that point. If you're at 14 wins, so you get 2 this weekend, 2 next weekend, or 1 this weekend, any combination, 3. The RPI is a big part of this thing, right? I think everybody kind of understands it kind of for what it is. But the simple fact of the matter is we need to go win baseball games. We're in a hole, but the schedule kind of breaks for us. But looking at the D1 baseball projections for the tournament, I know many of you guys keep up with this. There haven't been nearly as many tweets at Kendall Rogers this year asking if we're going to host, and Kendall's our friend, but it's kind of become a little bit comical at times, kind of how it all kind of works out, but they currently have the Bulldogs in the tournament, projected to make the tournament. I think a lot of people are expecting us to win the series this weekend and then win next weekend. And we certainly need to do that. Of course, it all starts tonight. Well, now, this afternoon, just passed along to us. Doubleheader today, no game Saturday, and then we'll stick on Sunday for now. But we're going to get underway at 4 o'clock today. 4 o'clock today, and then 40 minutes after that, we'll play game 2. And so Sunday still stuck on 1 o'clock. We'll see how things go. But, so here we go. Doubleheader today. That's fine with me. Let's go. We got to get these games in. And now, again, kind of getting back to the D1 baseball projections. Last 4 in, they have Kentucky. So, State's not even in the last 4 in. We're ahead of that. And we should be ahead of Kentucky since we swept them. And then kind of looking a little bit further down, like Notre Dame is on the bubble. Michigan on the bubble. Virginia beyond that. And, of course, that means a little something with Brian O'Connor in the mix here. But just kind of looking at some of the obvious ones. Texas projected to be your number 1 overall seed. They would be paired up with the Arizona Regional. And in that Arizona Regional, they have Texas A&M getting in as a 3 seed. I don't know that you'd want to see them, to be quite honest with you. I mean, the way this thing is set up, Texas A&M with their weekend rotation and the power that they have in that lineup, and then to be free of all of the disappointment of the season, be back in the tournament, I would not be the least bit surprised to see Texas win that regional. Texas A&M. And then, of course, they're paired up. They would have to go play in Austin. And you got to get up for that, right? Pretty nuts. They have Fayetteville, Arkansas, the home of the Arkansas Razorbacks, is a hosting site, and Arkansas is the number 2 overall seed, paired up with the UCLA Regional at 15. And I think no matter who wins that, if they play Arkansas, they're going to lose. Number 3, Florida State, and this is where Mississippi State is mentioned. I don't know that Florida State would want to see Mississippi State. We've had some history against them. They have us paired up with Troy in a 2-3 game, State to 3, and then Bethune-Cookman is to 4. I'm ready to leave for Tallahassee right now. Now, that's paired up with the 14 seed Corvallis Regional from Oregon State. They got Oklahoma going up there as a 2. That could be an interesting deal, right? LSU as the 4 seed would host. They got Miami in that bracket paired with the Oregon Regional. We talk about growing the game. Guys, none of these teams in the West are going to, if this bracket holds, none of these teams in the West are going to win. Georgia listed as the number 5 national seed paired up with West Virginia. That could be interesting. West Virginia, very gaudy record this year, RPI not elite. Auburn as the number 6 national seed would have Southern Miss coming in as a 2. That could be interesting. That's paired up with Coastal Carolina, and that's a loaded regional right there. In Conway, South Carolina, the projection is Coastal the 1, NC State the 2, Florida the 3, and then High Point the 4, right? You got to get an automatic qualifier in there. NC State and Florida, sign me up. The Chapel Hill, North Carolina regional would feature the number 7 seed Tar Heels with Ole Miss as the 2, Iowa is the 3, and then Holy Cross is the 4. Iowa beat Ole Miss head-to-head last year, you may recall. That would be paired up with the Clemson, South Carolina regional that has Clemson as the 1, Alabama as the 2. And how interesting is this? These 2 teams play this weekend. The 8-9s, Vanderbilt at 8, Tennessee at 9, would have paired regionals. Have Louisville in Nashville as the 2, followed by Xavier and Yale. You got to like Vandy's opportunities there unless the Cardinals can get hot. And then in Knoxville, you'd have Tennessee, Wake Forest, East Tennessee State, Kent State, and that's a tough place to go. And the Wake Forest, again, kind of plays in a silo. I mean, there's a lot of home runs hit there, but a lot of that is the product of a ballpark. But that's how I see it. Maybe you see things differently. But, yeah, it's interesting. You know, just kind of looking at how this kind of plays out here. And while we're looking at numbers, right? While we're looking at numbers together, let's take a quick look at the RPI. You know, you play enough and you win enough, it all takes care of itself, right? That's kind of how things are, how things should be. But you look at this RPI, and again, we're going to take some lumps next week because you got North Alabama and Missouri on the schedule. And I don't know that people have kind of gravitated to that bit of knowledge yet. But, State, from an RPI standpoint, not in terrible shape, but this is really the last RPI climbing opportunity we have in the regular season. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. None whatsoever. And, of course, the SEC, the best conference in the country. And so you got opportunities there, but sometimes Warren Nolan is difficult to navigate. Sometimes. They could just make this thing easy. Click here to see college RPI, but you got to go through a couple different things. So here's the live RPI. Man, the top 5 teams in Warren Nolan's RPI, which is as close to the NCAA RPI as you can get, 5 teams: Texas, Georgia, Auburn, Arkansas, Vanderbilt. And then there's Oregon State at 6. They're an independent, which is weird. It's weird. And there's LSU at 9, Alabama at 12. That's good for Mississippi State. Ole Miss there at 17. So you begin to think about what would that do for Mississippi State, whose RPI right now is 34. We're in a good spot. But if you win 2 out of 3 this weekend, you got a chance to pull inside the top 30. You got a chance to be in the top 20. Now, we are never going to play our way into a hosting opportunity this year, so go ahead and forget that, right? But the way the SEC tournament is structured, you may get the opportunity to have some RPI climbing opportunities there. But nothing is more important than the situation ahead of us, and that is this Mississippi State Ole Miss series. Again, now it begins at 4 o'clock today. 4 o'clock today, be sure that you get out and make some things happen. I know it's tough for people to get off and come be a part of all this, but we encourage you, if you can, get out there a little bit early and come cheer on the Bulldogs. All right, final segment of the show brought to you by the Stark Vegas Clubhouse. The best place to stay in the Golden Triangle when you've got a larger group with you is the Stark Vegas Clubhouse. It's so good to have everybody under one roof. I can tell you from personal experience, we stayed there for New Year's, had a great time. All the amenities, top shelf. Full service kitchen, wet bar. I didn't partake. I never do. Back porch area, the fire pit area. I was very proud of myself. Even with some moisture in the air, I was able to get the fire going. We had a great time just kind of sitting out there around the fire. 6 bedrooms, 2 soon to be 3 baths. And you've always thought about how fun it would be. What if we just rented a house? This is the old renovated clubhouse of the old country club out past the Highlands. Just 5 minutes away from the Mississippi State campus. Now, to learn more about the Stark Vegas Clubhouse and to see how well it could fit your needs, just Google Stark Vegas Clubhouse. Their Facebook page auto-populates, and you can peruse all the pictures of all the amenities available to you and your guest. When you Google Stark Vegas Clubhouse, some booking options will pop up. Airbnb, VRBO, but if you want to save some money, book through the Evolve website. Promo code BSR10, Beautiful Steve Robertson 10, BSR10 gets you 10% off your stay. I mean, you didn't know listening to the show was going to save you some money, but I can tell you, you need to plan some great experiences in your life. Life is fleeting. It is. And how great is it to have all the kids, all the grandkids under one roof? You can watch all the kids play together. Mom can make those cinnamon rolls for everybody for breakfast. Everybody can get in the kitchen, cook together. Just enjoy being together. Maybe it's a ball game weekend. Maybe you got some vacation time you want to spend. Maybe you can't. Maybe this year headed to Disney or headed down to the Redneck Riviera is not in the cards. I don't know your life, but book a stay at the Stark Vegas Clubhouse, and you can come enjoy the greater part of Starkville when things maybe aren't quite so busy. You'll be sure and check it out today, the Stark Vegas Clubhouse, the best place to stay in the Golden Triangle. Okay, news broke yesterday. The battle for the Golden Egg is going to be at 11 a.m. A few things that I want to say about that. Immediately once the news breaks, we have some very negative reaction to it. This is not Mississippi State's decision. ESPN sets the game. It is a national telecast. They wanted to air it at 11 a.m. because a lot of people are going to be home. Many of you won't be. Some of you will be at the game. Some of you will have to work. I understand that. But this is not a blame first Mississippi State deal, right? Now, what I was told is once ESPN kind of began to suggest this possibility, State was like, well, hey, we want to play that return game from SMU. We want that Power 4 game basketball that evening. So you'll have a doubleheader of sorts. That's kind of a unique situation. And some people are like, oh, Steve, kind of carrying water for the administration. I'm just kind of telling you how it is. They maneuvered some things to ensure that it could be a pretty special day and a special weekend. So you can come to the Egg Bowl. We'll beat Ole Miss. You can hang around and then head over to Humphrey Coliseum to watch the Bulldogs play against SMU. So it's a rarity that we're able to do that. I can't remember the last time we were able to pull off something of this nature. So we should have a great basketball crowd too. So just plan on spending Black Friday in Starkville. And some people are like, well, that ruins my Black Friday plans. Who is still shopping in person on Black Friday? There are so many great online specials that you can take care of. Plus, if you're in town for the game, in between the battle for the Golden Egg and the basketball game, you can run around town and go to some of your favorite shops in Starkville, including Campus Bookmart, and do some shopping here in town. You're going to live if you don't have Black Friday shopping. I know it's a tradition for some people, but the reality of it is I don't like the game being on Friday. I'm just going to go ahead and say it for what it is. I do not like the game being on Friday. And my reasoning is different than yours. The number one thing is when you've got elite players that are still playing football and they're in the playoffs at that point in the season, they can't come to our game. And that's a big game. Let's say you've got, hey, an in-state recruit that's kind of on the fence. They could come Thursday night. They could come Saturday afternoon or even Saturday night. They can't come on Friday. And so it limits your ability, and we only get 6 or 7 home games a year to host recruits, and a handful of those games are non-conference affairs. This is a big game that will not be well attended by recruits unless their team is no longer playing. Just the reality of it, it is. And not to mention, 11 a.m. kick, you're not going to have a lot of time to interact with them as a coaching staff because you're playing maybe the game that determines if we go to a bowl game or not. We may have 5 wins heading in there. Maybe. If we're good, and I say good, not great, and maybe we'll surprise some people. But, I don't like the game on Fridays. I know I may be in the minority there. But to get a national broadcast, a lot of eyeballs on the game. And I think people sometimes kind of forget that, we went 2-10 last year. We did. So, we're not going to get the primetime spot. And what's interesting, too, we're working through the LED lights, which I'm very much in favor of. I want Mississippi State to have the best game day experience around. I don't think there's any question about it. I think we all feel that way. But we're not going to see the LED lights against Ole Miss. And you start working through all of this, that Alcorn State game, probably not going to be a night game. Northern Illinois, probably not going to be a night game. And so right out of the gate, that's like 3 conference games at home that likely you won't have the opportunity to see those LED lights in their magnificent glory. Now, I'm sure Zach Selman and them will fight for some of it. Maybe Arizona State. That could be a good primetime game and have the opportunity there. But again, not a lot of home games this year that are going to necessitate us. If Texas comes in, maybe we get them under the lights. But that's the tough part about it is so many of these games that we are going to play at home are going to be non-conference games that we should win that will probably be 11 a.m. or 3 o'clock kicks. So we're not going to be able to kind of use the LED lights. And then the games that we do, will probably be games that we're not favored in. And so, again, needed to happen, but I don't know that we get to enjoy them as much this year as we want to. That's important to understand. And there were so many people when all this began to happen. Again, there's always this negative segment of our fan base. It's like, well, you don't get to shoot fireworks and use your LED lights, when you play a lot of games at 11 a.m. And I'm sure that'll be the case. Certainly that Alcorn State game and probably Northern Illinois both will be 11 a.m. kicks. And you know what we got to do? We got to play our way into a better time slot. You win some ball games, and all of a sudden the ESPN's like, hey, this Mississippi State team's better than we expected. Could we see an upset of a national team? Let's play that game at night. And as well as I do, the atmosphere there will be absolutely electric if that's the case. But, I would say right now probably 3 games this year we get to use the LED lights. Probably. That's how it sits today. I may feel differently come September, but that's how it sits today. But not a lot of kickoff times set yet. That'll happen as we get a little bit closer. I mean, it is May 9th, and of course we'll be hosting some official visitors here pretty soon. And, so we'll bring them out there and turn on the LED lights once they get operational. And it's already under production. And again, still kind of reveling in the glory of finally getting some firm plans announced for the IPF and a timeline. And again, you begin to think about, it's going to be 2028, basically 3 years from now that place is operational. When you go through these types of things, it is not something that you're going to rush. When you're going to spend $60 million, you're not going to rush that. Some people were like, well, I don't understand why we couldn't have it next year. Well, it's not that simple. It's simply not that simple. There's plans and there's decisions that have to be made and details that have to be ironed out. And not to mention the fact, too, that, we got to practice football, too. Our primary practice field has been that turf field closest to Seal. So it'll take some time. Not defending anybody, just trying to explain as best I can. Interesting, too, Brian O'Connor made some comments. So I guess let's back up a second. Wes Johnson made some comments about the Mississippi State opening. Does not appear that he is interested in here's what I will tell you about all of that. Number one, I don't think Wes Johnson is going to be your next baseball coach. Listen, that's not how I feel today. I don't think that Wes is going to leave Georgia, and that's okay, right? He's got a good thing going. He's expected to be a top 8 national seed. Why would you leave there? And I'm sure Georgia will find a way to kind of sweeten the pot a little bit to get him to stay. But he made a comment, like, hey, I'm not going to be traveling to Starkville. And, Wes was here in 2016 when we won the SEC championship. Very grateful to him for his contributions to Mississippi State baseball. But I don't think it's a love match. And he said that, and some people were like, well, glad that's over. But here's the thing. There are going to be a lot of coaches out there that get asked. And I don't mean this in a narcissistic way, though it will come across that way. When those of us that cover Mississippi State extensively, those of us that break news about Mississippi State regularly, when we report that a guy is a candidate for a job, he is going to get asked about it by his respective media beat. They wouldn't be doing their jobs if they didn't ask him. And so Brian O'Connor was asked about it yesterday, and he didn't really deny interest in the job. He just kind of talked around it a little bit. And here is what I will say about all of that. Number one, Brian O'Connor is a candidate for the job. But what do you expect those guys to say ahead of a weekend series? Do you think that one of these coaches, whether it be Brian O'Connor or Wes Johnson, is going to come out and say, hey, guys, I know we got a big weekend ahead of us. Virginia's fighting to get in the tournament. Do you think it behooves him to come out and say, yeah, I've been contacted by Mississippi State and we'll see what happens? How does that inspire confidence in his team? Wes Johnson's out there chasing a top 8 national seed. And again, I don't think he's going to be your coach, but even if he was considering the job, do you think he's going to admit it on the record? I can't recall a time that a coach that we were chasing made public comments about our job and said, oh, yeah, I've been in contact with them. I'm interested in the job. They'd run him out of town. And why would you say that and then ultimately not get the job and be stuck at a place where it appears you don't want to be? Every coach in the country would use that against you in recruiting. So don't expect a lot to break about the job from other media. And I'm not saying that to be disrespectful to those guys. Those guys all do a good job and they work hard. But they're not going to break that story. Like if Brian O'Connor becomes the head baseball coach at Mississippi State, it's going to be us or somebody like us or maybe a Kendall Rogers that breaks that. It's not going to be the Virginia media. Fair enough? I think that's important to understand. And, we're doing updates 2 or 3 times a week. I'm trying not to do them on game days or game weekends out of respect to our players and coaches that are trying to get us into an NCAA tournament. And I go back to something I said last week. We lose nothing by winning, right? And so many people kind of get it now. I think Mississippi State had made up their mind that we're going to move on from Chris Lemonis. And as Jeremy Foley so succinctly said years ago, what is inevitable should be handled today. Words to that effect. And maybe it lights a little fire under your team and you can salvage something from the season. And listen, I love Chris to death. And I don't know that the result of last weekend is any different if he's in a dugout. I don't know that. And you don't either. But the team played loose last weekend. We played with some killer instinct. And I think the team right now is in a good position. I wish we had played a midweek game, to be honest with you, because I don't want the emotion of all of that to fade. When you're hot, you want to keep playing, right? When you're struggling, you think some time off may allow the team to kind of recenter and focus. And so in that respect, not playing the midweek game might cool us off a little bit. And for Ole Miss, a team that's been scuffling a little bit, maybe it rejuvenates them a little bit. The time off may be good for them. We'll see. And again, 2 games today, 4 o'clock first pitch, and then 40 minutes after the first game. So there will be no post-game after first game. We'll wait until after the doubleheader is over. It's going to be a long day at the Yard for us. We'll have full coverage for you. And I think that's one of the things that, matter of fact, when I get done with this show, I'm going to go ahead and book my room for Missouri. And then of course, that's Thursday. So we'll record the Friday show from Columbia, Missouri to kind of recap the Thursday game. So we'll be gone Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And we'll be up there because it could be a big weekend for Mississippi State. It could be a weekend that we kind of clinch a regional. But if we don't win this weekend, we're in really bad shape. You don't win the weekend and then you go to Missouri, even if you sweep. Again, I think that puts you're right at 14 wins. You probably would need to go to Hoover and win a couple to feel like you're in. And so I get tired of sweating these things out. I think making an NCAA regional should be a foundational standard for Mississippi State baseball. Even in a rebuilding year, we should be a road regional. In good years, we should host. In great years, we should be a top 8 national seed in line to host a regional and a super regional. And that's what you guys want. And I think that's what we all want. And it's important to place principles before personalities. And so, very grateful to Chris Simonis for his contributions to Mississippi State. We're looking forward, And again, there are a lot of people out there. It's like we're winning. We want to continue winning. And Justin Parker and the staff won 4 games last week. And some people are like, hey, let's just promote Parker. Well, number one, we shouldn't make that decision on such a small sample size. And I do think Justin Parker is going to be a head coach somewhere. And I think something special has to happen for Parker to play his way into real contention for this job. But we should never just, hey, it's been one weekend, let's just do that. We owe it to ourselves to take our time and go make the best hire we possibly can. Because when you've got a guy like Brian O'Connor out there, and if memory serves me correct, 21 years at Virginia, and he's made the tournament 19 out of 21 times, have been to Omaha 3 the last 4 years, you go get that guy. There's no decision to make. If that guy wants to come and you can work out the financials with his resume and his ability to develop pitchers and get guys to the pros and be a mainstay in the NCAA tournament, there's so little risk in that decision. And there's a lot of guys out there that people are advocating for. There is a ton of risk in that decision because you just don't know if they can do it. Brian O'Connor has proven he can do it. Now, to be fair, in the ACC, he's won 70% of his games in his time out there. In the ACC, you get about 4 or 5 weekends where you can kind of get healthy, as they say. You can rest some guys. That's not the case in the SEC. So having depth is a big part of things. And so we encourage you to kind of hang in there with us over at genespage.com. We'll do our best to keep you updated as best we can. But do not place a lot of confidence in these press conference comments from some of the candidates because they're in a no-win situation. So you saw last year, Jim Schlossnagle, Texas A&M loses to Tennessee, and he's asked about the Texas job, and he comes out and he gets really angry, and then the next day he's at Texas. So understand, and even go back to Nick Saban when he was at Miami. I'm not going to be the Alabama coach. Then he becomes the most legendary coach in the history of college football, right? So take it all with a grain of salt. That's all I'm saying. Since we're not playing a ball game tomorrow, I'll be helping the bride at the spa. Many of you are booked. It is a slammed weekend, and we still have some openings on Saturday. So you can call Dana at 662-268-7601. You're going to be in town anyway for the ball game. You might as well come float with us. And the weekend, we're running out of time for the Mother's Day special. 2 floats for $99. And again, call her 662-268-7601, or you can buy online. Download the True Rest app and you can book online. But it is a very busy day. And so since I have already been roped into coming and helping, I'm happy to do so. But we look forward to seeing you there. And if you hadn't done so, go to dutynoblebook.com. You can get all my sports titles, get signed copies through the website, and including When the Bottom Falls, which some people say is my best book. And we'll look forward to seeing you guys this weekend. And again, a wet weekend. And so if you're headed to Starkville to stay in your game day condo, you're going to be looking for some stuff to do on Saturday. Come float with us, or possibly come out and check me out. I got a book signing scheduled for 10 to 12 at the Lodge on Saturday. There will be no game, so I may end up staying a little bit longer. But until next time, let's all live our lives in a way we make more friends than enemies, and people can see a difference in the way we live.